there, and welcome to Unit 3, Theme 2. We've reached a rather perilous stage in our journey where we're going to look at the curriculum reform initiatives that our education system has undergone and how this relates to creativity and problem solving in our classrooms. The learning outcomes for this theme are to examine South Africa's school reform initiatives and the motivation behind these since democracy. We're also going to examine the CAPS with a view as to what role it plays in educational reform. For this theme, you should have read PM1 Chapter 1, PM2 Chapter 15, and PM3, which is the CAPS document. Changes in the curriculum affect the lives, relationships, and working patterns of teachers and the educational experiences of learners. According to Gilbert, curriculum changes because it should not be the only means for students to learn, but it should also provide students with what is needed for life after school. And each learner should be competent with the outside world in as far as knowledge is concerned. Gilbert goes on to explain that knowledge should be perceived as a process rather than a product, which is collectively created, dynamic, and changing. When decisions are made on what type of curriculum a country wants to embrace, a variety of factors are taken into account, and these are used to guide the choice in the type of curriculum that is implemented. In a content-based approach, curriculum design starts with identifying the content that they want the students to learn about. So, for example, we would look at a history curriculum and we would start with what exactly the children should be learning about in history. For example, South African history or global history. So there we start with broad decisions. Another curriculum type is an experience-based curriculum. In this approach, curriculum design starts with identifying the learning experiences in which children will participate. For example, an experience-based science curriculum might be designed around the series of investigations. Curricula that are designed in this way can give learners very valuable learning experiences, but the downside is that there will always be debates about which learning experiences are most useful and why. The third approach to curriculum design is outcomes-based education. And this is the approach that was taken in South Africa when the curriculum was reformed in 1997. In an outcomes-based approach, curriculum design starts with the question, what do we want learners to be able to do by the end of their learning? Now, in this term, the end basically means when you leave school. In this case, curriculum designers make decisions about what learners will learn in the long term, in the medium term, and in the short term. In other words, the teacher is thinking about the long-term goals, the medium-term goals, and the short-term goals when planning lessons. If we think about life orientation, in grade 12, we expect learners to have a good idea of the development of self in society that discusses healthy lifestyle choices. I personally can see a direct link from that right back to grade R, where the very first theme is my body, and we consider the topic of what my body needs to keep healthy. So as you can see, we start with baby steps and we slowly build our way up to the final outcome that needs to be achieved before students leave school. The great thing about outcomes-based education is that it embraces both the use of content and the use of skills in order to achieve the desired outcomes, or what you guys refer to as the CAPS specific focus. The basic approach to outcomes-based education is really quite simple. We first decide what we want learners to achieve, which is our CAPS specific focus or outcomes, and then we make all the other decisions about teaching and learning. Outcomes provide a guide to answering most questions about teaching. In this way, the choice of content, activity, resources, and assessment flows quite naturally. Curriculum 2005 was introduced as a policy document in 1997. An essential component of any curriculum framework is the intended curriculum. That is, a description of what students are expected to learn and how this learning will be assessed. The intended curriculum will always reflect the biases of those who developed it and the constraints, political, social, economic, time, and so on, that were placed upon them. When the curriculum developers seem to get it wrong, for example, they include some outcome statements that are not clear, or they include controversial content, it is easy to use this as an excuse for criticizing the underlying philosophy of the framework. Clearly, this is inappropriate. Any shortcomings in the intended curriculum should be fixed, but this should be a normal part of a continuous process of improvement. A failure to produce a perfect curriculum should not be taken as a reason to totally discredit the philosophy behind the curriculum. And unfortunately, this is what happened with Curriculum 2005. The revised National Curriculum Statement was implemented in 2002. National Curriculum Statement in 2007, and Curriculum and Assessment Statement introduced to be implemented in 2012, which is the one we currently use. I'd like you to think about the characteristics of creative people for a moment. Imagination and originality, flexibility, decision-making, communication and expression, collaboration, motivation, and action and movement. I'm going to quickly take a look at our curriculum from the perspective of a creative teacher. In terms of imagination and originality, there is a much greater emphasis on creating authentic learning experiences for children in our present curriculum, and the freedom to design imaginative and original lessons. Having come from a prescriptive, content-based syllabus, many teachers were not prepared for the flexibility allowed in outcomes-based education. Teachers had no choice in the change of the curriculum, but it now asked them to make a variety of decisions. And for some teachers who had not been trained in this way, there was too much decision-making involved. They were provided with outcomes, and it was now their responsibility to decide when and how this was going to be taught and assessed. The benefit of our curriculum is that it places a fair amount of decision-making in the hands of schools and teachers so that we can create meaningful learning experiences for the children that we teach, because it acknowledges that children come from different social and environmental situations. Our curriculum allows for us to communicate and teach in many different ways, and it also allows for children to respond in many different ways. A sense of confidence and connection to authentic feeling allows for children to express their unique insights and thoughts with others. I know from my experience in the previous system that I was never allowed to express my unique insight or thoughts with others as a child. In terms of collaboration, most of the work done prior to Curriculum 2005 was individual work or whole class work. Suddenly having to change one's teaching style and teaching methods can be daunting. Because of the collaborative opportunities that are offered to us, many teachers work together in their planning and engage in team teaching. As teachers, we are also encouraged to collaborate with school and district-based support teams and parents as well, as we acknowledge that they were our children's original teachers. Pre-1994, when I was at school, very few lessons allowed for movement, unless it was a PE lesson. Exercise and physical activities are associated with better focus, enhanced memory, and greater ability to learn. In addition to this, as teachers, we are encouraged to create active learning experiences for our children, where they are able to interact with the content in many ways, such as reading, playing, building, collaborating, or acting. Action and movement stimulate the building blocks of learning in the brain, and regular exercise can act as a cognitive enhancer to promote creativity. Many teachers took the previous syllabus from before 1997 and tried to make it fit the new curriculum. But this didn't work. It was like pushing a square peg into a round hole. And as a result, they disliked it. And the fact that they had to change from what they were comfortable with. Having been trained in all of these curricula, I personally enjoyed the RNCS and the NCS. And I found CAPS a little restrictive for me because I like to be in control of the ways in which I structure my year, and I have a tendency to be a tad out the box. That said, I definitely acknowledge that for many teachers, especially those who hadn't been formally trained in the way that I was, they were a bit daunting. And the CAPS definitely provides more structure for those teachers who felt a little insecure in our previous curricula. As part of this theme, you're going to be looking at some of the other curricula from countries around the world. I'm just going to take a quick moment to touch on the Finnish curriculum. The first thing that is particularly noticeable about Finland is that there is no homework. They also have some of the most impressive statistics globally in terms of their achievements. Their high school graduation rate is 93%, and about 2 out of 3 students are going to go on to college or university. Their test scores are actually higher than everywhere else. The students get plenty of teacher interaction. Their class sizes are way smaller than ours. Testing is kept to a minimum, and I know for anybody who has had to operate with the CAPS that we have a lot of testing that happens. Kids are given more time to be children, and I think that's really important for our children as well. Teachers are expected to have or required to have a master's degree, but at the same time they are also very much cherished, and they are highly esteemed and quite well paid too, I might add. If you could choose anything from the Finnish curriculum, what would you like to adopt into our education system? We have had a fair number of changes to our curriculum since 1997. However, it's my personal opinion that many of them have been positive. However, the initial reaction to change is often against it. I also believe that we should realize that a curriculum that isn't regularly updated stops being relevant as society changes at such an incredible rate. I just think about back when I was in school. As someone who studied IT in school in the days when you had to take it as an additional subject because it wasn't mainstream enough yet to take as part of one's school package. The first time I used Windows was when I had to make my matric program run in it. Yes, I got through my entire school career without using Windows until grade 12. I also got through my entire school career and about halfway through my first degree without Google. As teachers, we need to have our finger on the pulse, and as professionals, we need to ensure that we too are ready to change and to be able to move with the times. I'm sure your lecturers are going to enjoy hearing your opinions on this topic as you work through the remainder of the theme.